The first Sunday of Lent always begins with either Matthew, Mark, or Luke's gospel that reminds us that Jesus went into the desert for 40 days, fasting and prayer, and there he was tempted. We pattern this season of Lent on this experience of the 40 days that Jesus spent. He had just come up from his baptism, led by the Spirit into the desert. He needed a period of reflection to give thought and prayer to what does it mean when God said to me at my baptism, "You are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." What is the mission of this beloved Son? What is God expecting of me? To some extent, that's a question or a quest for our 40 days of Lent. How do we experience these days reflecting upon what is God is calling me to do and be as a daughter and a son of God? So that the 40 days that Jesus spent in the desert become the pattern for our 40 days. And all three of the synoptic gospel writers also talk about the temptations and the challenges that Jesus faced in that desert. Luke uniquely tells us at the end of this passage that he departed from him for a time. In other words, Jesus wasn't finished with temptations because he had succeeded to avoid the three. In fact, in the 22nd chapter of Luke, he says to his disciples, "You are the ones who have stood with me in all of my temptations." Challenges, struggles, temptations Jesus of Nazareth faced. He wasn't through with the devil just because he succeeded at the end of that 40 days. And you and I know at the end of 40 days of Lent, we're not always going to be perfectly successful ourselves. Like Jesus, we too continue to face challenges and struggles, certain kinds of temptations. That's something of the value of this season of Lent, this pilgrimage we're making. That first temptation seems simple enough. A hunger after 40 days. The devil says, if you are the Son of God, you could turn that stone into bread. I know you're hungry. You could turn that stone into bread. And Jesus could have. Jesus could have turned into himself to take care of his own self-preservation. But he resists that temptation. That today, I think, takes the individualism that runs rampant in our society. My life, my group, what's good for me. Some of the writers for our Franciscan world have identified among Franciscans this danger of individualism. The more we friars become such individuals, it's dangerous to a community life. I remember how often a friar was being asked to serve in a certain place goes and tells the provincial minister, well, my spiritual director and in my prayer, I think I need to stay where I am, or I'm being called to this. That's an individualism. Not listening to what is the community asking on Friday. So individualism affects religious life, it affects church life, it affects our families, us individually. Take care of me. Take care of number one. Jesus' response to that, we don't live by bread alone. What Luke doesn't finish saying, every word that comes from the mouth of God. There's where I got to draw my strength. The second temptation, kind of coupled with the third one, this drive to dominate and be successful and achieve. Jesus is faced with that, the opportunity sort of put before him to take charge of this world in a way that was not in consort with what he believed the Father was asking him to do. He came to serve and not be served. On the world scene right now, someone like Vladimir Putin seems to have listened to that temptation, to strong power, to take control. I would even say, kind of sold his soul to the devil. It's easy to see when something like that is before us, but we also have to look at ourselves. What in me wants to control, wants to dominate, wants to be in charge? We're not going to be in charge of this whole world. Lord knows. The leaders of the world right now have a burden on their shoulders and how to respond to this war. But again, I come back to what maybe I can do. How do we show support to those who are being so oppressed? And I come back to prayer and fasting. There may be other things that we can discover, ways that we can be helpful. But prayer and fasting is something we all are capable of doing. In this season of Lent, we're entering these 40 days. Jesus went through the 40 days, and at the end of it, began with energy and zeal, being who God wanted him to be. And I believe that's what Lent is somewhat about. Be who God wants you to be. Be who God calls you to be. And resist the other paths that you could take of being in control, or being number one, and all of that. Some people sacrifice their health, they sacrifice their family life in achieving, wanting to be the best. There's so many ways that these temptations can play out in our lives. So as we begin these 40 days, there really are 40 days from today till we come to Holy Thursday. So don't let anybody tell you Lent is only 40 days. We just had 4 on the front end of this. Really more like 44 days of Lent. 40, of course, is a symbolic number for this time of renewal, preparation, making right as best we can the wrongs that are part of our life and maybe part of our world. So I welcome you, and I accompany you in this pilgrimage of the next 40 days as we ourselves try to be faithful to our baptism call. You are a daughter of God. Before anything else, you are a son of God. before you're a husband, before you are a wife, before you are anything, you are a child of God. And if we could keep that in mind, as Jesus did in the desert, perhaps we would find ourselves fortified in such a way to choose what really is the right path